In this lab experiment, we're going to learn how to make common laboratory measurements that are accurate and precise using common laboratory equipment. As part of this experiment, we're going to be looking at some of the basic laboratory tools used in the lab, such as the analytical balance, graduated cylinder, and a burette. The analytical balance is used to measure the mass of an object. These are typically going to be objects that are solids. Graduated cylinders are used to measure volumes of liquids that are of smaller amounts. Burettes, they are used to measure the amount of volume dispensed and are used in particular instances such as titrations. When using an analytical balance, you're going to want to obtain some kind of sample. That sample you're going to want to first place in a weigh boat before measuring its mass up on the analytical balance. When you determine the mass, you're going to need to record all of the digits that are displayed on the balance. If you notice in the balance on the picture, it runs out to 4 significant figures. You're going to want to make sure you write down all of those digits in the lab notebook. You'll also want to make note of the units that are displayed on the scale and record those as well next to your number. Remember, when you're recording a number, you need to include all of the units and all of the numbers. That includes the 0 to the left of the decimal place, that is used as a placeholder, as well as all 4 decimal places displayed on the analytical balance. There are 2 basic methods you can use when measuring the mass using an analytical balance. The first is to place the empty weigh boat on the balance and then hit the tare button. Taring the balance sets the balance to 0, so that anything on the balance now shows as a mass of 0.0000 grams. Once the balance stabilizes, put your sample in the weigh boat and record the mass. The second method that you can use is to tare an empty balance, place your weigh boat on the balance, record its mass, then place your sample in the balance and measure the mass of the weigh boat plus the sample. You will often use this approach when you need to determine the mass of an object at an initial step and then come back again at a later step, or if for some reason your sample is wet and you need to dry it. Or it's also possible that you needed to filter your sample and then come back and get your filtered mass. It also comes in handy when you're working with a number of people and you need to share the balance. You're going to record the mass of your weigh boat, go back to your station and perform a procedural step, and then come back and weigh the sample and the weigh boat. One thing you do need to ask yourself, though, is it appropriate after taring the weigh boat on the balance to remove it and add substances to it and then return it back to the balance for a measurement? When using a graduated cylinder, it's very important you pay attention to the gradations on the cylinder or the markings on the graduated cylinder when we try to determine a measurement. When we look at the snapshot of a graduated cylinder, you should notice a couple of things. First, we have 2 labeled markings. The 6 milliliter and the 8 milliliter markings go all the way across the graduated cylinder. No other markings are specifically labeled. So we have to examine the remaining lines to determine their meaning. About halfway up, we see a line that's bigger than all of the other ones. This guy right there. This indicates 7 milliliters. We can verify this by counting the markings between the 6th line, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, to get up to what we think is the 7 milliliter mark. Okay? We know that if we take 10 markings divided by 5, that's 2. So we know that we are counting up by 0.2. So this is 0.2, 0.4, 0.6, 0.8, and then we get to our new 1 milliliter up. When we write down the measurement we need to determine, we look at where the meniscus falls. The meniscus is that curve here that forms by the liquid in the graduated cylinder. And we're going to take all of our measurements from the bottom of it. All of the measurements taken with this graduated cylinder can only be to the 0.1 milliliter place, as our markings on the graduated cylinder do not show any better precision. When we try to make the measurement here, we know for certain that we have 6 milliliters because we have this 6 milliliter marked. But we can also see our meniscus does not go above that 7 milliliter mark. Okay, so we know that it's going to start with 6. We know that our minor markings are going up by increments of 0.2. So it looks like our meniscus is between the 0.6 and the 0.8 marking. And we're going to have to estimate some value in between because we'll see that that meniscus is not precisely even with the 0.6 marking or the 0.8. So it's entirely appropriate to call this measurement 6.7 milliliters. Remember, when you make a measurement using a graduated cylinder, to always estimate one additional decimal place past what is marked. That is, when your graduated cylinder is marked in units of 0.1 milliliters or 1 milliliter. When the graduated cylinder is gradated at 0.2 milliliters, the best you can estimate is that one decimal place. Take a few minutes and study the 10 milliliter and 100 milliliter graduated cylinders. What do you notice about their gradations? How many decimal places or significant figures can you determine? When using a burette in the lab, that's a long, skinny-looking cylinder in the middle, we have to use specialized setup to hold it. Because the burette has one opened end and an end with a stopcock, that's that thing that twists there at the bottom to let liquids out, we simply can't stand it on the counter. Instead, we have to clamp it to a stand that'll hold it up. The stand is called a ring stand, and that clamp is either a burette clamp or a three-fingered clamp, depending on the type used. The one that's in the picture shown is a burette clamp. When using a burette, technique is important because you want to ensure that you have full control over the number of drops being added to your solution in the container. The burette allows you to have very precise control over this to make accurate and precise measurements of the amount of liquid being added to a solution. There are a number of considerations you must make when using a burette. First, look at the gradations and compare them to those you saw in the graduated cylinder. What kinds of similarities and differences do you see? Next, ask yourself, can you read the burette the same way that you read a graduated cylinder, or are you going to have to think about it just a little bit differently? What about direction? What direction should we read the burette? Will we read it from the bottom to the top, like the graduated cylinder, or from the top to the bottom? Should we estimate an extra decimal point like we did with the graduated cylinder? When filling a burette, you should use a funnel as the cylinder is very narrow. Do not spend a lot of time trying to get the liquid precisely to the zero line. To do so is really unnecessary and a waste of time. Instead, record where the initial volume is in your laboratory notebook using the gradations on the burette as a guide. Remember, you will want to be at eye level when taking the measurement, so you may need to adjust where the burette is clamped by bringing the burette down a little bit lower. Once you've dispensed the amount of liquid you need, again, record the measurement based upon the gradations on the burette. You think you should leave the funnel in the burette while obtaining a measurement? What about when you're dispensing a liquid? When determining the amount of liquid dispensed, you will take the final volume minus the initial volume. This is why it is important to write down precisely your initial and final volume in your lab notebook. One thing to think about, and a common error that students have, is can your final volume be less than your initial volume? Reflect on your answers to these questions and provide them as part of your reflection at the end of this module. Remember, if you have any questions, please ask them on the Course Piazza site, reach out to your TA or myself via email or office hours to ask.